Hi, Vicky Buxar doing my video response for the phonics article that I read. So I evaluated a comparison of nonsense word fluency and curriculum-based measurement of reading to measure response to phonics instruction. It was a 2008 study published in the School Psychology Quarterly. Ethan Van Norman, Peter Nelson, and David Parker were the authors. So um, one of the reasons I was attracted to this article obviously has to do with phonics, and that was the assignment. But I do a lot of intervention with my students. And with that, I feel like there's a ton of assessments that I give, whether it's as a result of the gen ed curriculum, result of the IEP data collection process. I feel like there's a lot of assessments that I give, a lot of different ones that I give that do some of them see the same things as others? So, interestingly enough, that's what this study set out to do. They are comparing so first of all, it's 3,000 first graders receiving tier 2 phonics interventions. So the authors use a multivariate, multi-level modeling, which I'm still looking into. So if anybody has additional information on that, please share, to compare curriculum-based measures and nonsense word fluency assessments by giving these assessments simultaneously to see if the improvement would be different. The student growth improvement would be different between the two assessments. So these are two progress monitoring measures, which a lot of us use for many different reasons in the classroom, whether it's intervention or just instruction. So, one of the other purposes of this study was to set out to see, um, do these assessments capture the response of the intervention that actually is being implemented. So, in the related literature, a couple things were mentioned that I felt were worth noting. That the curriculum based measurement relies on using a very small amount of instructional time. I've never used a curriculum based measurement. None of the examples that I saw, anyway. I know a lot of people in these classes have mentioned dibbles and don't really seem too happy. But that was one of the ones that was mentioned when I was looking up the different types of curriculum based measurement. But one of the problems associated with the curriculum based measurement was, does it include enough assessment items on word recognition and phonological decoding skills? So the other assessment was the nonsense word fluency, which isolates the use of phonics skills to read pseudo words. So those assessments are actually considered a major predictor in later reading fluency. So, again, I was interested to see, okay, well, let's see where this is going to go. So, at the time of this study in 2018, there was not an abundant amount of research comparing curriculum based measures to nonsense word fluency to measure response to intervention. So, one of the other things that they're really going to look at in this study was the intervention effective? So I have a sore throat, so this is killing me. So, two questions. One, is the degree of the average weekly growth rate distinct between the two assessments? And then the second question is the degree of the average the reliability in which the growth is shown differently? And is it shown differently between student differences in the growth? So, the subjects of the study, like I said, 3,000 first graders receiving tier 2 phonics interventions. So the purpose was to determine if nonsense word fluency was different. The improvement in nonsense word fluency would be different from the improvement in curriculum-based measurement for students receiving that intervention. So the gender was pretty evenly split. It was like a 51%, I think, male to 49% female. So it was kind of an even split. But then the racial breakdown kind of was not. It was mostly white participants, and the other participants, it was like a 60% white participants. And then the remaining participants were American Indian, Alaskan, Native, Asian, Black, Hispanic, or Latino, or multiracial. So, again, those two instruments that they used were the nonsense word fluency and the curriculum based measurement. So, I am going to, the nonsense word fluency scores. So the way that it was scored was a concern to me as I was reading the study, and I was glad that it was addressed at the end of the study as well. So the way that the nonsense word fluency was scored was that any response was accepted that matched the sound sequence. So it could just be letter by letter. I'm going to try to see what were the other forms that they accepted: letter by letter, full word, or partial blending strategies. They were all accepted as a correct response if it matched it. So that was the nonsense word fluency. And then the curriculum based measurement, students read from a grade level probe for 1 minute while the correct answers were scored. So both assessments were considered reliable and valid. So, looking at the procedure of the design, both the assessments were given during 2 spring semesters a year apart. So, this happened in 2014-15, they did this assessment, and then it was given again in 2015-16 to compare those results. So, interestingly, though, the tutors that were providing the assessments, and that were providing the intervention, they received 20 hours of training prior to implementing the interventions and 10 hours just for the assessment training. So, what I really, I'm going to get into that in a second. So, as a result of this, and I am going to go back. So, one of the things that I definitely appreciated was that one of the parts that they were coached on was giving corrective feedback. But then the interventions were given one-on-one in 20-minute sessions. And I remember reading from a prior video that we discussed with the NRP, National Reading Panel Report, was that one-on-one instruction was not the most effective. That small group tended to be more effective with phonics instruction. So I found it interesting that these interventions were provided one-on-one. So moving into the results, the curriculum-based measurement, which results were slightly higher than the results of the nonsense word fluency, but there wasn't a significant statistical difference between the two that would really be relevant. So basically, what they concluded was that the same results were given. They were able to conclude the same measurement of growth from each of the two assessments in responding to the intervention. So basically, there was no difference. Either assessment could have been given, and instructional, plans could be made, and student growth could be measured. But what I did find interesting was that what I had mentioned prior about accepting that they didn't differentiate between student responses when they were doing the nonsense word fluency, that a student who responded with a letter by letter or full word or partial blending strategies, they were all accepted. So I thought it was interesting. So as myself, I'd be interested in a replication of this study with the nonsense word fluency responses more clearly defined. And then another suggestion made by the authors was to study if the response measurements were a function of the phonics interventions given. So that was the article that I read. I'm going to post the reference below if you'd like to read it. It wasn't terribly long, but pretty interesting. So hope you guys have a nice week, and thank you. Looking forward to seeing your videos.